And we're live. Welcome back to another edition of BlogChat, and you've got everybody.
Yeah.
Yes,
everybody.
How exciting is that?
Exciting and rare.
Yes, indeed. That does not happen very often these days, or
These
ever. Actually.
days.
Yeah,
ever.
Well,
But
Yeah.
we were all physically present together in January.
right.
That's true. And that may have been a first.
Yeah, and the power went out, so let's be careful.
I'm holding my breath.
Yeah, that was the force of nature caused by us being together at the same time, like a vortex.
The
Oh,
boy,
Xanterra-
we're
Xanterra
gonna break
vortex.
the YouTubes.
no, let's not mention the X word. So, Gabe, you were the lead in on a really powerful post this week, and that's why we're all here with all of our faces on the screen. We're sitting here in
Including-
quarantine, or some places are coming out of it, right? And we're all dreaming of where we want to go. So you had a beautiful story leading on that blog post. So I was wondering if you would relate it to us face to face.
Yeah, definitely. Right, we're all in this together, right, everyone, and we're all dreaming, and we're all desiring to go out to those, greener and darker spaces. But some of us are fortunate enough to have that in their backyard or close to you. But for me, stuck in Brooklyn, I haven't seen a star in a long time. But I haven't seen any airplanes either, so that's a good thing. But there still has been out of this came this amazing sense of community that really reminded me of the workshops and the community that's built and the conversations that are built out of that. And that has been, the 7 p.m., the clap, as they call it, to honor all of the people that are working, the service people, the hospitals, the nurses. And it's funny, in our neighborhood, we even clap at the FedEx, if a FedEx or UPS, driver goes by, we clap and just honor that person, just to say, listen, you're going out there right now and really risking yourself. And it's been, so I that experience of just going out there, I bring a big bottle out there, and I clang it in between my railing, my 2 bars. It creates a really unique sound. And Nancy uses a pot and a pan. Our neighbors, one has one of those whistles that I could never do, right? And it's like, if one thing comes out of COVID, if I could learn how to whistle like this, that would be awesome, right?
Plenty of time to practice.
And it's just been a wonderful community thing. We're hearing the horns that you would hear at like sporting events, schools, and it lasts for what seems like 10 minutes, but it's really only 2 minutes. But it just for us, that's been our outside experience here in Brooklyn, and it's something that Nancy and I haven't missed, once. It hasn't rained on us once, which has certainly rained. But it's also just, again, brought us together and just thought of, and it's also been timed with the sun setting, which is just an amazing thing that I've been able to witness and see over 2 months of sunsets in a row, which that has never happened. I mean, I like to get to a night shoot as the sun is setting or before the sun sets. So that's a bonus part of it, but it's been really nice to feel that warmth of not only the sun setting, but the community that are coming together for this. So that's just got me thinking about where I want to go. This is the moment I'm in now, but it's also just got me going about where I want to go with you guys, where I want to share with our friends, our family from this, and kicked off the conversation that turned into this, by the way, amazing video, a very inspirational video.
It's fun.
And blog from that. So kudos, really, Tim. We submitted all of our images. Tim was the curator, and then Matt was the composer that put it all together. And it really
On the backbone of Chris's words.
On the back, exactly. Yeah. Let's not forget Chris's words, which definitely, right? A poem,
Yep.
a veritable Walt Whitman poem. And really,
I was going for Dr. Seuss. I blew it.
well, you
missed.
forgot
Oh,
the
man.
Lorax.
You need a few more rhymes in there, mate.
I thought you were going for John Muir, Chris.
This is beautiful.
So I really, it was a wonderful team effort. As we talked about, we miss traveling and seeing each other, but to collaborate, and that's the interesting thing, is that we can collaborate on so many unique things now. And this was just one that I'm very proud of and will be proud of forever. And yes, I took 5 audio takes on that script, Chris.
Wow.
Well, Gabe, I got to say that after reading your post, Mabel and I started to go out and watch the sunsets.
Awesome.
So it inspired us to change our habits a little bit. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Up here, I don't think there's the clapping, but I know that it's happening across the nation because we've heard
In the world.
our student, Heather talking about it in Wyoming. So, and of course there's news reports and everything. So
Yeah.
it's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. Like our dreams of returning to nature too. So
Indeed.
maybe we should play the video now. And just for
Yeah.
everybody who is watching now, if you want to see it again, it's on our YouTube channel here where you're watching, and we'll put a link in there afterwards. So let me just go find it now because I have it on my computer. And then we're going to share a screen. And here we go. Enjoy.
At the end of a long, long winter.
At the end of a trying time.
At the end of any long day. The night awaits. The night calls. And we are ready. And we are ready.
And we are ready.
And we are ready.
And we are ready.
Ready to venture into nature.
Ready to return to the moonlight.
The night calls. Ready to sit under the stars and gaze in awe at the universe.
To again be at peace.
To again be inspired. And to again seize the night.
It's something that strikes me watching that now is that almost all of those photos we kind of shot together in pairs or trios or whatever. It's kind of reinforces what a group experience night photography is in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I miss it.
Yeah, and that's why we authored this post. We're dreaming, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Looking forward to that day we could step out again. Wow. Yeah, I'm tempted to just sit here and feel what I feel every time I watch that video. Maybe we should jump into some stories. Because I can have the feels while Chris is talking about, the blog post, the North Cascades. So, Chris.
Yes. North Cascades. Okay. Yeah, I it's funny, like when I wrote my book, I hadn't been to North Cascades yet. And writing about it, like researching and writing about it, it was one of those parks that I just was drawn to. And I finally got there. It was in 2016 when we went out to Seattle to work on the Creative Live. I had a couple of extra days and I went up to North Cascades and just fell in love with the place. I just camped out for 3 nights and shot, and then I went back there again last year. And it's nicknamed the American Alps, and for good reason. I mean, it's just, I mean, it sounds trite. But I don't know how else to say it. It's just this beautiful, beautiful mountain scenery, where you're just, everywhere you go, you're just surrounded by peaks. And a funny thing about the park is that, it's relatively accessible by road. There is a road that goes through it. You can certainly see plenty from the road, but most of the park is backcountry. And in fact, that spot, the photo that's in the blog post is of Mount Shuskin, which is so remote within park boundaries that it's actually easier to drive 3 hours up and around and through the Mount Baker Wilderness and access it through there instead. And it's a very inspiring place to be. And it's a place where we've got a workshop scheduled this summer, fingers crossed. And I don't know if it's because of the workshop or what, but all this time spent inside, I just keep thinking of getting into a place like that. And North Cascades just keeps coming into my head. You just have this feeling of being in this vast expanse of untouched wilderness, where the air is clean and the night skies are beautiful, and the light, and there's just so much there. There's so much there. There's there's the mountains, but there's also these alpine lakes. This one's called Picture Lake. You can imagine why. But like bodies of water like this are all over the place too, and there's waterfalls and rivers and streams. I mean, it's just anything you could imagine would be in this type of an environment is there, and very peaceful. And a funny thing about it is, despite all of this that I'm saying about it, it's one of the least visited national parks in the US, despite being just as accessible from Seattle as Mount Rainier and Olympic. I mean, it's not hard to get to. A ton of people go to Olympic and to Mount Rainier, and then North Cascades sits up there just a couple hours north of Seattle with hardly anybody visiting it. And it's just stunning. And I just can't wait to go back. I'm really hoping that the trip this summer works out. That's my dream. That's where my head keeps going back to is that place.
Well, Chris, I just want to say that I think you really brought us there with it. And I really appreciate that. I know Lance mentioned this as well. But the way that you wrote it, and I think each one of us wrote about our dreams in a different style.
Yeah.
Yours definitely I was walking, I could feel, I was walking right beside you down that path and listening to the rocks and the branches, crunch and everything like that. And so thank you. You took us there.
Oh, thanks. Thanks. I mean, that's, I was just trying to think of what it's like to be there, and just to try to paint a picture of what it feels like to be in that place.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think it's the least visited of Washington? It's so funny. It does not have the one iconic thing like Rainier and.
You've got a good point that might be it. I mean, it is the mountains. It's the mountains that it's named for is the iconic thing there. But maybe that's a little harder for people to latch onto than Mount Rainier is a volcano. There's so much more to the park, but yeah, I mean that's the centerpiece. I don't know. It's a stunning place. I mean, if you're in Seattle, I mean the other two parks are great too, and of course there's Mount St. Helens. I mean, there's a ton of great things, all the Puget Sound up in Washington. But if you're in Seattle and you have even just a day, just drive up to North Cascades. I mean, that's all it takes. I was there just this past winter too. I was visiting a friend in Seattle, and we were looking for something to do for a day and just drove up to North Cascades for a day. I mean, it's that easy. You could make a day trip there. So falling snow for my first time there. It's the first time I was there in winter. And I mean, even that, it's just, yeah, I don't know. I can't say enough, good things that I feel like I can't really adequately express what it's like to stand there in that scenery.
Well, I brought Nancy on her birthday, June 24th, to Mount Baker. And for the first time ever in her life, she saw snow on her birthday.
Yeah.
We got into a snowball fight. We literally got into a snowball fight on her birthday.
That's great. Yeah.
One thing I'd say is that, it's great that we have a few, lesser visited, undiscovered gems in the park system with so much pressure on so many of the parks these days that, it's nice that there are some that, they're, like you said, Chris, they're accessible and they're right there, but for whatever reason, Gabe, I'm thinking of when we were in Lassen last year, this
I'm with you.
amazing place in California, but I think it's the least visited of the California national parks, and wow, it's spectacular, right?
Yeah.
5 types of volcanoes.
So the funny thing is, so I've spent about, I want to say maybe 10 or 12 days total in North Cascades. And the one time that I ever saw a lot of people there, I mean, a lot relatively, like the campgrounds were full. That's the only time I've ever seen this. It was a few years ago when there was a Perseid meteor shower in a new moon. And it had made the news, and kind of people went up there to see the meteor shower. There were people who had just laid their sleeping bags out on the grass at an overlook, and were just watching it all night. And so that says something about the night skies there too. That is the one time that I saw people flock to the park. Yeah, beautiful spot.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to the day I get to go see it. For sure.
Yeah, I might just have to poach that workshop.
Yeah, come on.
Are we all going to want to go on all of our remaining workshops with the rest of it?
Well, that's not unusual, right? We always kind of want to do that anyway.
Hey,
We kind of crash each other's workshops. That's true. I don't know if I could crash a Scotland workshop though. I think that's where we're headed next.
All right, well, let's go.
Oh, segue. Oh,
I'll teach you how to crash that one, Matt.
Thank you. I need that.
Cool. All right. Well, Scotland. I went for the first time in 1995 and pretty much immediately fell in love with the place. And it's funny. I preface it with a long-term fascination with islands in general. And, I wrote about this in the blog, and I'm not sure exactly what it is, but there is a strange sense of liberation when you are enclosed or surrounded by, a defined boundary. It's weird. I feel free and when I'm on an island, which is just kind of contradictory because you're locked in place there with very clearly defined boundaries. But and it's funny. One thing I didn't write about in this post was, I've been living in Vermont for 3 years now, near Lake Champlain, and there are some absolutely gorgeous islands right in the middle of Lake Champlain. So I've driven across them. I've spent a little bit of time there, but really need to take the time and go back there and spend some more time on the Lake Champlain Islands, and I think there's a workshop there too. But anyway, let's go back to Scotland. I'm just going to share my screen because I'll show you a couple of images. All right, so this is on the Isle of Skye. Let me go into full screen on that one. There we go. This is on the Isle of Skye. near a place called Sligahan, which is kind of the climbers' epicenter for climbing of the Kulin Mountains, and that's one of the Black Kulin Mountains in the distance there. Scotland, on my first trip, I spent most of my time in Edinburgh, and then I got on this very cool jump on jump off minibus tour where you get to they have a bunch of vans making a loop around the country and stopping at pre-assigned spots every day, and you can get on and off whenever you want to, which was just the coolest thing. And this was back in '95. I had about 10 days, and the two spots that really stuck with me were going around the coast, stopping on the northernmost point of the mainland and catching a ferry up to the Orkney Islands, which, well, Tim and I are supposed to be there right now, but we're going next year, so that's cool. And so I went there on foot on a passenger ferry and got off, rented a bicycle, and pedaled around the mainland. Orkney is actually an archipelago of a lot of islands. I'm not sure how many there are, but probably 30 or 40 different islands. And the big one is called Mainland. And Orkney is just absolutely, it's mind-bending that there's tremendous amounts of 5,000-year-old Neolithic monuments dotting the landscape all around the island. And so these people live with this daily reminder of their history, this prehistoric stone structures that are still standing in the landscape today. But yet the Orcadians are really a very cosmopolitan people. They're very open. They're tuned in to what's going on the world. At the same time, they're proud of their history. They have a distinct culture, but they're really open and receptive. It's, at that time, it wasn't at all a diverse community, but they were really progressive thinking, which is really unusual for an island community. Usually island cultures are very insular and protective and conservative, and, this is how it's done and you don't do it differently. And you don't do anything on Sunday, and you don't do anything on Sunday. But Orkney's not like that. So I spent a few days there photographing the amazing standing stones, and then got back on the ferry, went back to mainland, got on the bus, and went around the coast the long way, down the west coast, and got off at the Isle of Skye, which is the largest island of the Hebrides, and it's the largest island of the Scottish Islands. And it's only maybe a mile or so off of the Scottish mainland, but it is one of the Gaeltacht areas where they still teach Gaelic, Scotch Gaelic in school. There's still a community where Gaelic is the first language. And it's more of that kind of traditional island culture where it's so, kind of frozen in time and nothing may ever change. But it's, so it was a cool contrast to be on that first trip and have that contrast between these two very different experiences. My experience on Skye was mostly about the landscape and the diversity of the landscape, experiencing the natural beauty of that.
Do you have any other images? Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about those other images, didn't I? Yeah,
it's a good story though.
These are some standing stones on Lewis, another of the Hebridean Islands, and the landscape is just dotted with them all over the place. And some of them are not as grandiose or huge as the stones of Stennis or the Ring of Brodgar on Orkney or Stonehenge in England. Very different. This was the backyard of where Chris and I stayed on our trip in 2018 on the Isle of Lewis in the little Uig Bay. Just, incredible landscapes and really amazing moments. And one thing I'm going to say here, the pictures that I pulled out to show you guys are gasp, daytime pictures. There's sunlight on those fields there. But
Could have fooled me.
it's not that often I do the daytime thing, but man, the light on these islands is just so incredible. Yeah. Oh, this is also in Uig Bay on this huge white sand beach. There's an area, this tidal flow the area is called Saltings, which is this basically a maze or a labyrinth of tidal canals that go through this marshy area. And at high tide, it's completely underwater. And then at low tide, the tide goes back and it reveals this maze of little waterways there. It's just, amazingly photogenic and gorgeous. Oh, it's another one on Skye there. There's a night shot. And this is near one of the most photographed castles in Scotland, Eilean Donan, which is on the mainland as you just before you cross the bridge to go over to Skye. And everybody stops and photographs the castle. Of course, you've got to. But there's this amazing Loch Ulsh right there, right next to the castle. And as many times as I've been there, which is probably about 10, I don't think I've ever seen anybody step away from the castle and just photograph the landscape there before. This is a weird spot on Skye called the Fairy Glen, which is this, it's like maybe a half a square mile, maybe a little bit bigger than that. And it is all these strange hillock, it's like a miniature mountainscape, miniature mountain range where the mountains are only, a couple hundred feet high, but they're scattered all over the place. And it's a magical landscape. So anyway, I am hoping to, at some point in my life, go and explore every single one of the islands off the Scottish coast. And there's a lot to go, especially off the west coast, the Hebrides there. Yeah, I don't know. It might take a while, but I'm gonna certainly make an effort to do that. And I want to, bring you guys to as many of them as we can, and do as many different Scottish island photo tours as we can too. So
You're killing me, Lance, with all those shots. Gosh, I just want to be back there. It's like,
Yeah,
the
I know you're thinking-
Saltings and the Fairy Glen, and
yeah, you're thinking, damn, why didn't you shoot that at night?
yeah, never did.
Fairies
Never
at
did.
night,
Mm,
Well, the Scottish weather can be fickle, right?
indeed, it can.
You know what? I love the idea, Lance, of just when you said, just all the islands, and islands, can be so dramatic, right? Because they're getting hit by the waters, the sea, and all this kind of stuff. So they're carved. But the pictures you just showed are there are some of that drama in it, but there's also that tranquility, that calmness that you can find when you yourself are an island, when you kind of like look inward more like an island, and that's amazing. So thank you for taking us
thanks.
there.
I'm not thinking of the guy's name right now. A book that had a huge impact on me and my desire to explore Skye in particular, but the Scottish Islands. There's a photo book called A Long Walk on the Isle of Skye, and it's from the southern tip to the northern tip. and around one side of it, 75-mile walk.
Wow.
With illustrated with photographs all the way. And it just, I picked that up on my first trip, and it's kind of what inspired me one of the things that inspired me to want to go back.
So I wanted to share with, we've been organizing a lot, right? With being at home and everything. And the last project I had in the house to organize was a bookshelf that was just sort of the random bookshelf in the house. And it had all my travel books and plus all these other books on it. But I organized all my travel books and I got rid of the ones that were really outdated and not useful. And the one place I had the most books on was Scotland. And I picked up some, just like, I have these really unique little magazines and stuff that talk about the stones and all that other kind of stuff. Cause ancient history, mythology, all that kind of stuff interests me. And I love reading a good travel log with it. And just, obviously we wrote this blog, so that was all in my mind. But I thought it was really funny to see Scotland well shown in the travel log section of my books.
Cool. Hey, I want to call out one more book. This is not a photo book. It's called Sea Room, SEA, like as in the ocean, Sea Room, by Adam Nicholson. And he's an Englishman who ended up one way or another acquiring a small group of islands in between Skye and the mainland called the Shants. They've been uninhabited, I think, since the 20s or 30s. And he wrote this. It's not an autobiography because it's about the islands. It's not about him. But if anybody who's going on our Orkney trip or anybody who wants to go to Scotland is watching this tonight, pick this book up. It's called Sea Room by Adam Nicholson. And it's at the same time both romanticized, but also a lot of reality checks at the same time. And it's about this guy's experience of the time that he spent on this little group of islands for the 30 or so years that he's owned them. And by the way, even though he owns them, they are open and accessible to anybody who wants to go anytime. So,
any relation to Chris?
No,
I don't. Actually, no, he doesn't even spell the name. I'm looking at his name right now. There's no H in his last name.
Imposter. No, sorry.
So, anywho, islands, man. That they're just they're the cat's meow, and Theo will back me up on that, right, kid?
Yes, he will. And three of the five of us chose islands.
Yeah.
So you're on to something there.
Interesting. You're muted, Matt.
I wanted to pause there and say, okay, everybody follow Theo _the_ cat. Gabe's now muted too. So that's our segue. And yes, from one island to another, we thank you, Lance. And now we have Tim talking about an island kind of close to it.
Very close, actually. Yeah, very in close. My mind. Yes. Interestingly enough, I chose New Zealand. I didn't get the part of the blog that it was supposed to be a place we were going to visit soon. I thought we were just dreaming of going to a place. So my bad, because I'm not sure when I'm going to get back to New Zealand. But interestingly enough, that it comes on the heels of Lance's, because Scotland has always held a dear place in my heart. And I find them reminiscent of one another. And when I first visited Scotland, I felt like I was at home. And when I first visited New Zealand, I thought, how could I move here? How could I move here and have this be my new home? So they both kind of touch me very deeply, both places. I've been to Scotland several times now. It's obviously a little bit easier to get to than New Zealand. But New Zealand is, it's so hard to describe in depth. I mean, the short answer is it's magical. It's magical. I love the landscape. I love the people. And it's just, it's an amazing place. Ooh, what are we seeing here, Matt? Oh, sorry, bud. Yeah, I love the landscape and I love the people. I just remembered how sort of grounded everybody was. And as I traveled around, and in the blog post, it mentions I was there for work, and I was doing some work for a magazine. And this was long before digital. I was shooting 35 millimeter slide film. But it was very different. It wasn't landscape photography. It wasn't night photography. It was simply, travel photography. I was covering a multi-sport event. And so that was great. And it got me all over the island to all these different locations. And as I note in the blog, I just found it so fascinating as I traveled from Christchurch over the mountains down to the West Coast, how I couldn't help but think it was like America in miniature. You know, I mean, the East Coast, or at least Christchurch, was sort of this older city, but very cosmopolitan, but the architecture reminded me of Europe. And the rest of it reminded me of the East Coast. You know, it was like, you know, flat beaches, and, you know, kind of going into the lowlands, into, you know, grain growing areas, and grasses and meadows. And then suddenly it rises up into the Alps, like the Rockies. And then the Southern Alps are gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. You know, tons of glaciers and, you know, and high peaks. And then it drops down into what looks like you're in the Northwest, like in Seattle, you're in this temperate rainforest, and the glaciers drop right down in kind of like almost like Alaska. And then it's like a rocky coast, like you would be in Oregon or Washington. And it was just so familiar in that broad geographic way. But in a more particular way, everything was just a little bit different. Yeah, there's the rocky coasts of the West. Yeah. And Matt's showing some images that are not mine at the moment. And that was simply because, and we'll get into that story in a second, because I don't have anything to show for it. But so it was familiar in the general geographic sense, but everything was just a little bit more magical. You know, the forests were forests, but they were covered in moss. You know, the ferns were ferns, but they were tree sized. You know, there was penguins instead of ducks. You know, there's, you know, people jumping off of bridges with bungee cords, and these blue rivers flowing like you're in Alaska or in Canada. You know, when you get down to the southern part of the southern island, and it feels like you're in Scotland. And so it's just amazing. It's such a wide variety of beautiful landscapes, and such a tiny little, well, I mean, it's not a small island, but comparably to the States, or, you know, mainland Europe or something, it's quite small. And so there's just, it's just magical. And all you have to do is watch any of the Lord of the Rings to, you know, see some of that was filmed on the South, some of it was filmed on the North Island, but it just has this magic to it, this difference, you know, this difference that we don't get in the States. It's not, we're not familiar with it. And that in itself is awesome. But I think the people and the landscape together really make it seem quite magical. Now, the reason that I don't have anything to show for it, and as I wrote in the blog post, is that after working for about a week and a half, I set out on my own for about 9 days. And I was shooting my view camera at that point. Again, this was long before digital. And every single shot that I took, and I can't even remember, it was close to 100, somewhere around in that area. Every one of the film blanks was blank. Every one of my sheets was blank, simply because I was using a new piece I hadn't tested. And every time I pulled the film up, I was exposing absolutely nothing. The film went right back down with the dark slide. And so I got home and I started developing them, you know, and I was developing them by hand. And, you know, the first 8 or 6 came up blank, and I'm like, oh, that's weird. And then the second 8 blanks, third 8. And I thought, oh my God, no, 4th 8, 5th 8, every one was blank. And so I love to tell that story on workshops, because people are like, oh no, I missed that shot. You know, I'm never going to get back to Colorado or Washington or Alabama or whatever it is. I'm like, wait a second, I got you beat. I don't mean to be a one-upper, but let me tell you, I spent 9 days in New Zealand, which is like 14 hours away, and I shot for 9 days, and everything I lost. So,
But you
so
have
that
the
was
memories, right?
Oh, I do. I can almost remember every little click. I really can, and that's okay. And I knew I wouldn't get there anytime soon. And it's been, I don't know, it was probably 90. I can't even remember, maybe 93, 92, 90. No, it was, no, I'm sorry. It was probably closer to 95 or 96. But still, it was a long time ago. And, but I'm gonna get back. I'm going to get back. And I look forward to the day when I do. And that photograph that you had up earlier from the blog post was from a friend of NPAN's, a friend of ours, Susan Magnano. And I don't exactly know where this is, but it looks like it could be somewhere down the near the Remarkables, but I can't tell. There's just so many dynamic mountainscapes and landscapes in New Zealand. I'm not sure where this one is, but to me, this really does kind of capture just part of New Zealand's beauty, just the absolute raw beauty. And I really thank her for allowing us to show that and put it in the article because I didn't have anything. I had nothing to show but blank film.
Well, no, such unique landscapes, but also totally new stars for us Northern Hemisphere folks.
That's right. That's right. Now, Lance and I, we're a bit accustomed, right, Lance?
Yeah, I've been down there once or twice, and
just once. I'm not a pro at by any stretch, but Lance and I spent some time on Easter Island, so we saw the Southern Hemisphere's Southern Cross and shot Southern Star Trails, and so that was a ton of fun. Yeah, so that's where I want to go. I'm dreaming of New Zealand.
You should get a free night at the Hobbit House for that story you just told.
Man. Yeah.
So, Gabe, sorry, Tim, my question is, was it quick loads or ready loads?
It was, I cannot recall. It was one or the other. Yeah, it was one or the other because I didn't want to load film when I was down there. So I brought either the quick loads or the ready loads. I can't remember which it was.
Were you going to offend at this point anyway?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
I think I have 20 sheets of the quick loads if anyone wants to use them.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, thank you.
No, I never had any problem with the quick loads. It was the ready loads. And, I remember you could use one of them, you could use in either Fuji or Kodak's holder.
Right.
But I think the Fuji ones you could use in either holder, but the Kodak ones, you had to have the Kodak holder or the Polaroid holder.
Yeah, it was something like that. It was probably the Kodak because I always shot Kodak films. I didn't shoot black and white Fuji films. I shot Fuji color film. So it was probably one of those. It was dreadful.
That's a painful story. And I can't believe that you processed all the sheets,
I stopped about, halfway through, but yeah, it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking.
Yeah,
truly.
So, but what you shot for the assignment was good though, right?
That was all fine. Yeah. Cause it was 35 millimeter slide film that came out fine. The article went, it was all great, but yeah, not one. And I had gone back and I'd searched, I was making notes while I was down there and did all this planning and yeah. So for those of you out there, when you lose a shoot one night, believe me, it's really nothing. It's nothing compared to losing 9 days worth of work halfway across the world.
Well, 30 years later, we'll get you back there.
I'm looking forward to it. And I hope you all are with me.
I think we're going to be all fighting over who gets to go with you.
Crash the workshop.
Crash the scouting trip.
Just drop in.
That's an alumni workshop. What are you talking about?
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Ding ding, we have a winner. Wow. Speaking of crashing, when Chris and I were done with Devil's Tower last year, we were talking about what are we gonna do after Devil's Tower because we scheduled some time to explore the area. And Chris, our original plan was to go to Wind Cave, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I was excited about it because I hadn't been there.
Me too. And I haven't visited any official like NPS caverns yet. I was thinking that was going to be cool, and I wanted to see what the grasslands looked like around there and everything.
Yeah.
But the elevator was broken.
Of all things.
The one thing you need to see, the wind cave. Elevator was broken.
Yeah.
So Chris was kind enough to say, I have another idea, but it's like, I don't know, a half day's drive away, right?
Well, I kind of said it as a joke, like we were looking for something else to do. And I just kind of threw it out there like, well, if we want to go for a drive, Theodore Roosevelt National Park's in North Dakota. And it was like a day or two later when you said, I don't know if you were kidding or not, but I can't get it out of my head about Theodore Roosevelt. And yeah, I was like, well, yeah, why not?
One of my favorite guys. I mean, like a lot of the things we enjoy happen because of him. So, and I had 5 states before we went there, I had 5 states left in the US to visit.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have 4. So I scratched North Dakota off the list. That wasn't the reason I went there though. It was a bonus.
Yeah.
So wow. Yeah, we boogied up from Wyoming and we went all the way up to North Dakota. And damn it, I fell in love.
It's a special place.
It is. It is. I was completely smitten and totally taken by surprise. I had no idea. I didn't know what to expect. I think one of the beautiful things is going in there with no expectations, right?
Yeah.
Except this, your word bears a lot of weight with me. If you say it's worth doing, I'm going to believe it's worth doing. So maybe I did have expectations.
Well, I hadn't been there either. That was another one of the parks I wrote about for my book that I had been there when I wrote about it. And by the time I was finished researching and writing about it, I was a place I really wanted to go.
Right.
And one of the things I was looking forward to there was the wild horses. Now, there's only 2 national parks with wild horses, and that's one of them. And I'd never seen wild horses before. The other ones in Mesa Verde, where I have been, but I didn't see the horses. And I don't know why, but it was really cool seeing those. And, and we ran across herds of them probably half a dozen times when we were there, and it didn't get old. I don't know. It was just something, I don't know. There was something special and magical about that.
I agree. We got there just a sweet time. We got to the South Unit. We grabbed some dinner real quick in the cute little town there. And then we made it in just for sunset. We stopped at this gopher town, and I saw my first wild horses in a park. And this was from that moment. And boy, that was cool. And this is a rare daytime photograph for me. Yeah, that was
Does that one on the right have a collar on?
The one on the right?
No, I'm just kidding.
So. Oh, you're funny. So yeah, that was nice. And all of these little mounds here, these are gopher holes, right? Yeah. So that was the first thing I saw as we drove up on the plateau there, and it was beautiful. These horses just frolicking around and grazing around, and then we went to the river bend and we saw. These thunderstorms, these beautiful thunderstorms were following us around from Devil's Tower to every place we went for the rest of that trip.
Wow.
And this was, I was shooting the river with Chris, and I turned to my left and I saw these thunderheads coming in. So I just grabbed that little moment there. Got some stars up there, like it was a good summer for lightning, but it felt really good with the strong moonlight. And they've got the little Missouri is just scooting through here, and these beautiful views. I don't have the other image processed, but this goes around to the right in a nice horseshoe there. And then there's another one up in the north unit, which Chris and I went up to investigate too. So the 2 units are separated geographically, and you have to drive a little bit to get between them. They're not contiguous. And they have slightly different features. They share some things, like the horses and the bison. But I guess the story that I remember, and Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Theodore Roosevelt, after some tragic events in his family, spent some time here thinking about what to do that was meaningful in his life. And he arrived at a decision here that ended up leading to the foundation of the national parks. Is that accurate?
Well, that was before he was president.
Yeah.
And yeah, that whole experience that he had, just sort of getting in touch with nature and all that. He had a ranch nearby, which is actually a third unit of the park that we didn't go to. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of pivotal in his life, that experience. And when he went on to become president, and he was the president who signed the Antiquities Act and the law, which, we still have today, which gives the president power to preserve lands, which is used to create national monuments, which oftentimes become national parks. And Roosevelt was responsible for signing the laws that created a lot of, I want to say about 10 national parks, either immediately designated as a national park or some land that became one. So yeah, he's been he was very instrumental in creating the parks that we have now, which is why we see his name all over them.
Yeah. And this is for me, it just kind of hit home while we were there. This journey that we've been on, we're going to 5th year now. Like it's been a journey. It's been an adventure. I've grown along the way, and I've grown to learn more about what I love. What I loved emotionally before is now attached to more information about how these things came about, the struggles that people went through to get them to be where they are. And it just turned out to be, for me, it hit a special place when I was there at that park. Like without that moment, without him stopping there, a lot of the things that I've enjoyed and helped other people enjoy, with my friends here, just wouldn't have happened. And it was a good thing. And it felt really special to me to do that. And driving through all of the grasslands and stuff there. But of course, like there was the odd things that I've never seen, like the cannonball concretions.
Whoa.
That was just freaking cool. And now they're gone. There we are. So yeah, those were cool, except for the awful graffiti that was scratch-eaty that's in it.
Yeah.
But that was just really beautiful to see. And then you turn to the right, and 90 degrees from that is their version of the Badlands, and we were just discussing this today amongst ourselves, the light pollution up there or the lack of it right now, because that orange glow really makes this photograph look kind of beautiful. But apparently it's from a lot of industry that's nearby, and you'd expect it's North Dakota. It's going to be dark, right? No, not so much. Like not that part, but it's possible that right now with some changes that are happening, that it could be a lot darker there because there's a lot fewer people working at the moment. So,
yeah. Well, that's the oil industry in particular, which there's been the last few years, a lot of local criticism about how much light they're creating, particularly people who love Theodore Roosevelt National Park. But with the way that the oil industry is right now and the price is so low, a lot of the oil fields down there, up there have been shut down. From what I've heard, this is the third time it's happened. It comes and goes based on the market. And right now it's shut down. So if you want dark skies in the north unit of the park, at least facing north, then now it's probably a pretty good time to go.
I'm going to hop in my car.
So you guys were talking earlier about Northern Cascades being a very limited visitation, or not that much visitation. Surely Teddy Roosevelt's got to be the same way. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. Not to, I don't want to insult Eastern Montana or Western North Dakota, but it's, there is no major city next to it. I mean, except for Billings, and that's not exactly a major city,
Yeah, Tim, I don't think the people who live there would mind you describing it that way. They kind of pride themselves on being out, in a sparsely populated area. They love the land.
Yeah, exactly.
Most people who live there, that's why. They like it like that. But yeah, I don't know where it falls in terms of visitation, but it's not one of the more popular parks. In fact, most people wouldn't be able to name that park. If you work in the national parks and then you've heard of it, but it's not a household name park.
Well, I would agree. And, it seems, I wonder how, in addition to distance from a major metropolis, how much the iconic views of parks really affect the visitation. So for example, somebody had mentioned the visitation in North Cascades, and like, what is the iconic shot of North Cascades? I can't think of one. I could think of one in Yosemite or Glacier or Big Bend or Yellowstone, but what's the iconic shot of Teddy Roosevelt or Northern Cascades? You know what I'm saying? It's
yeah.
And yet that it's a shame, because that iconic shot, to us is just like, oh yeah, there it is, shoot it, whatever. But now we've got the whole, the beauty of the park to explore. And that's where we want to spend our time. And so places like Northern Cascades and Teddy Roosevelt really are just rife with just, exploration. And I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's nice that we have a mix. We've got the famous parks and the not famous parks. I think it's great that there are hidden gems. Because if you care about the parks and like visiting or shooting in these places, then it gives you little surprises.
Absolutely.
Big surprises.
Yeah.
Because I got to say, Matt showed the photo of looking over the Little Missouri, and there's a few spots where you can get up to these magnificent views of the S-curve of the river, looking down into the Badlands and the river going through, and you get. We weren't there during foliage season, but you do get foliage along the river down there, and not a lot of people know these spots, and they're really stunning. You can get big vistas and big nature, in these parks that you haven't heard of. So they're well worth looking up and exploring. And the bonus is you can be there in July and maybe see 4 other people. And that's nice.
And hundreds of bison and dozens and maybe hundreds of horses. And outweighing all of them is the Prairie Dogs.
And the Prairie Dogs, I remember, so when I was first researching the park, and then Matt, when you and I were looking into specific spots to go, I remember this like a weird thing about the Prairie Dog towns are on the park map. And I'm like,
why?
That is such a weird thing. Like, I think prairie dogs are cool, but are they really like a visitor attraction that you got to put it on the map? And then we get there and they're huge. I mean, these prairie dog towns are just gigantic. They just go on and on and on. And it's like, oh, well, that's why they're on the map, because they take up a lot of space.
Clearly they're lacking in predators.
Is there not coyotes there?
Oh, there are coyotes, and there's some birds that'll grab them too. In fact, that's one of the photo tips of the park. If you want to get some photos of the coyotes, you want to be around the prairie dog towns at dawn and dusk.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to show one more clip, and then we can pass it on to Gabe. This is just an example of what you'll see for the bison there. Sorry for the wind and the breathing. But
look at the tails.
Look at all their tails. They're rolling in the dust, right?
Great.
Yeah. And they were all over.
Yeah. So, I don't know if you remember, but whenever we stopped to do a night, to shoot at night, if we had to walk away from the car, we were nervous about walking back because they were everywhere and they would seem to just like not be there and then be there. And not 3 or 4, but like 100. Yeah. And so, we would walk a quarter mile, not knowing if we'd be able to get back to the car when we were done.
Right. Because you don't want to startle them.
No, you look at them and they could like strike at any moment. I mean, they're, hey, did the Rangers tell you the charge discharge story?
No.
See, when you go to Yellowstone and you're around the bison, the Rangers and the guides will always tell you, watch their tails. If their tails go up, one of 2 things is going to happen. They're either going to charge or discharge. And so, you know,
Love it.
Good to know. Important safety tip. Thanks, Egon.
Okay, next. Gabe. Yeah.
So I want to segue. You know, I just want to mention that for me, that I first became aware of Teddy Roosevelt National Park through this wonderful book that I read like a year or two ago, called "The Hour of Our Land," which I believe all you guys have a copy of. And if you need that, and that really, the story about that park, you know, really linking it to the history of Teddy Roosevelt and the ongoing history with the oil industry is amazing. So I dropped a link in our YouTube for those of you watching it. Definitely recommend that book. It's a really wonderful book that kind of showcases some of the small parks and some of the bigger parks as well that are out there. So
great, Gabe. Thank you for that.
So that I guess I'm the one that's wrapping it up with another island, another far away island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean that I've been dreaming about since I was a little kid. Again, as I mentioned before, I love mythology. I love ancient history. I love archaeology. I remember when I was 9 or 7 or whatever, one of my favorite all-time gifts ever was I had the, you have to chip away at the saber-toothed tiger fossil, you know? And so Easter Island, I don't know when it made an impression on me, but the fascination with it has been ongoing, so much so that when Nancy and I were getting married, and Nancy was like, "Where should we go on our honeymoon?" I didn't skip a beat. I said Easter Island, and she was like, "Yeah, I want to go there too." And we had really never discussed our mutual, passion for this very enigmatic island. But we talked about it. We researched it for a couple of weeks, and then we realized that obviously with the money we're spending on a wedding, Easter Island it's a big time commitment, and it does cost a little money to just get there. You got to get down to South America, and then what is it? Another 4-hour flight from there, guys. Lance and Tim, who've lucky enough who have gone before.
Yeah, it's like 2,000 miles, I think, from Santiago.
2,200 miles, yeah. So practically another 4-hour flight, and then once you're there, you're on a pretty small island with a lot of Maui, on there. But I was really obviously so that's been there, and it's been in my mind, since 2006 heavy. And when Lance suggested that we lead a workshop there a couple years ago, I was hoping I could get on, but the timing didn't work out. And it's so funny because Tim, you were the person who raised their hand last for that workshop, and you were the one that got to do it.
It's true. It's true. And it's been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
And I was just like, you know what? That's the way karma, and sometimes that's the way the ball bounces sometimes. But, lucky enough, we were able to offer it. It's sold out again this year for January. And there's a good chance we'll continue to offer it, and hopefully get Matt and Chris out there too. If you guys want to go, because I think, one of the cool things was, I always wanted to go there, but then to have access at night, which, I remember again discussing with Lance at the beginning when we're looking at that, it's like, we need that access. That is like the penultimate access. If we get that access to the statues at night, oh man. Yeah. And you guys, when you were there and when you guys came back and you started pouring in, these images, this is one of my favorites just because it's got one of the iconic heads there, but I just love the depth of this, the star trails, the whole scene, the light painting, everything just kind of clicked on it. But you guys, as you mentioned, Tim, you saw, the South Pole, you saw, was it Miguel, how do you say it? Magellan's Light. You saw that down there, and you're able to get fairly close to these, and have access that is, from what I've heard with our research with our organization, we're going to even have better access this year. And as relationships grow, usually good things come out of it. So I'm really looking forward to I thought when Lance put together this workshop and doing it for 8-9 days, I was like, wow, we're going to know every inch of this island, and we will. And that gets back to what Lance was saying about just exploring those islands and taking your time and looking for the Maui, but also looking for the top of the hills, the shoreline, and all the other wonderful aspects of this special place that, people have been, mystified and everything for 2,000 years. So that's a place, for me, I love dreaming about just getting outside and getting to some dark space, some close by realistic space, and just getting this trigger finger exercise some more and just seeing the stars again. But to have a true dream location, a bucket list place that can also hopefully be, checked off within the next year is magical, is important and amazing. And I really look forward to, sharing that with you, Lance, and with the guests that we're going to have with us. And I just invite you guys all. You've heard all of our stories, so we've asked you to drop your dreams in the chat. Continue to drop those chats on there. And it's just, in these days and times, it's just important to continue to dream of these places, to think of these places. I think Katrina just mentioned she needs to go out on a really long road trip right now. And yes, we all do, safely,
No kidding.
Securely, and with our pets. Because this guy's not letting me go. He's been the big benefactor of the whole thing. But we definitely need to continue to dream and continue to explore.
Yes.
That's part of our DNA. And it's just really important for us to do that. So.
Yeah, and boy, what better time, than whenever we are finally, cut free, cut loose, and it's everybody gets to decide when they are comfortable going out in the world again, right? And I've been so kind of amazed and somewhat befuddled by the variety of emails that I've gotten from people on trips that are postponed or possibly running. It's so amazing. And I got one the other day from somebody on the main trip, and she was saying, thank you guys so much for keeping this alive and keeping our hope up that, we can go. And, I don't care if I have to eat all my meals in the hotel room, and if we have to do image reviews over Zoom in the hotel room, I don't care. I just want to go. And I love that, that enthusiasm. It contrasted with, another email I got. It's like, oh, you mean we might have to social distance on the workshop? Like,
we're all huggers.
Surprise.
Yeah.
We are huggers.
We're all
I was like,
huggers.
It's gonna be hard.
What rock you been living under, dude? So, but it like what the point was, everybody's going to pick their own time when they feel ready. But oh man, when that time comes, we're going to be so ready, and it ought to be an epic trip, right?
Yep.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, yeah. Not to the park down the street, not to the state park around the bend, but do something off your bucket list, like Gabe said.
And Chris did title the video perfectly. We are ready.
We are ready.
Yeah, we're ready. I think everybody's ready.
Ready. Patiently ready.
Patiently ready, yeah.
Yeah.
Patiently.
Gabe, I just want to add in, you're in Brooklyn, and you said the only bit that you've gotten out to do is, bang some pans and some bottles along the fence lines. And, and I'm thinking to myself, here in Missoula, one of 3 states with the lowest count of COVID in the country. And I have not been out. One day I took a drive like 15 miles down the road and drove up some old dirt roads that I've never been up. And I could be doing it, but it's all about mindset, like you say, Lance, and I've been so focused on, on working and doing other things and, being a part of the lockdown. And, I got a message from a friend and I said, she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, just the quarantine thing. And she's like, yeah, quarantine in Montana means going hiking every day. And I thought, I suppose that's available to me. So,
Yeah.
I've not been out. I've not been out either.
I've summited more mountains.
Isn't that the state motto of Montana? The social distancing, 6 miles, 6 miles social distancing.
Yeah. Yep. It's part of our motto: no laws and social distancing. Yeah.
I've summited more mountains during quarantine than the last 2 years. So
Jeez.
I've been hiking every weekend and kayaking lately too. So being outdoors is social distancing, right? It's also exercise and it feels good. So
You're killing me, Hill.
sorry. I live next to these eroded plateaus called the Catskill Mountains. You live next to what?
Yeah, the Rockies in the Rockies, but they're snow covered until July.
Oh, those. Get outside.
Yeah.
Stay in. We should observe local laws.
Yeah. How about you, Lance? You're in Vermont. You're kind of open up there.
I feel amazingly lucky to be here. And I think about, Gabe and people stuck in their mostly indoors in apartments.
Yeah.
And, oh man. In fact, when we stop this, I'm going to go outside and I'm going to shoot some Milky Way in my backyard. So
we'll be right over.
it'll take a few hours to get here, but
you have our quarantine room set up yet?
I have two quarantine beds.
Two quarantine beds with quarantinis coming up. Boom.
Yeah, I'm just so lucky. I live. We've got it's not really a neighborhood because all the houses social distance. They're mostly on 10-acre lots, and there's this little street next door that has five houses on it. I think 4 or 5 houses. And all of the neighbors have this, this standing agreement that the land is for everybody. So everybody mows a path connecting all of their properties. And it's just like we've got cool. Like a mile long loop through the fields, through the meadows. And then there's a couple of other miles of trails through the woods. So quarantine hasn't been too bad for me. I've been okay with it. So
that's great, man.
And I feel for the folks who are in the cities, and glad I'm not there anymore.
Yeah.
But we're dreaming. We're getting ready. We are ready.
We are ready.
We are ready.
Ready.
I'm ready to go beyond my backyard. Yes.
But tonight you stay in your backyard. Sounds great. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's great hanging out with you guys.
Yeah.
Good to see y'all.
Absolutely.
Miss you.
Indeed.
Yeah. I miss everybody out there too. Being on the workshops and that camaraderie and
Well,
during all that camaraderie, what's the one thing when we have a group meal together, or when we are like kind of like, the camera's working for an hour, we all kind of huddle up, in the field, and what's the one thing we talk about is like where to next?
That's
like
true.
One of the main discussions is where are we going next? Let's talk about it. Let's get inspired. You might know, we're all like-minded because we're out there shooting at night. So I've seen plenty of people be introduced, inspired, and confirmed so many locations that were on their list or not, and so it's amazing. And I look forward to not only sharing these adventures, but continuing this conversation with you guys either online, but even better out in the field.
Oh, Gabe. Oh, that was perfect. You know where we're going next? We're going to Instagram Live, baby.
Oh yeah, that's right. So, right, tomorrow we're gonna continue this conversation tomorrow about where we're dreaming. We have a special guest, Ralph Lee Hopkins. For those of you who know him, he is traveled the world with Lindblad Expeditions, and shot for National Geographic, National Geographic Traveler, a bunch of other magazines above water, below water. I even taught him a few things about night photography. So we're really excited to kind of dream and really talk. I'm really curious to know where he's dreaming of going, because I'm like, where hasn't he been? You know, so asking the one person who's, I feel, has been everywhere, what's left is going to be a really interesting conversation. And it kind of started with, I was like, I don't see any pictures of Antarctica at night, right? You know, and I know he's been, so they're going just in the summer times and stuff like that. So, you know, we're going to go. We're going to figure it out. But guys, join us tomorrow night, 8 p.m. on Instagram Live. We can continue this conversation there as well.
Right. And if you aren't already, if you're watching this either now during the stream or later, please hit the subscribe button and hit the notifications here on YouTube. We really appreciate it. You get to know every time we do something new. Lately, it's been more than not more. So we are making some interesting things lately, and we appreciate it. And give us a follow over on Instagram too. We appreciate it. And visit us at our website, nationalparksatnight.com. From all of us, it's all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for